Are we live? Hi, good evening, everyone. Hi, good evening, everyone. Hi, Avinash, Harsh, Nikhil, Yogesh. Is my audio and video okay? Is my audio and video okay? Yes? Awesome. Awesome. Okay. So today we are going to create a social networking website. With this project, there are three important topics that I want to cover today. One is sessions. The second one is passport. And the third one is Cloudinary. Okay. What are sessions? A session is basically uh, a user session from when the user logs in till the user logs out. Okay. Session is of two types. One is temporary and the other one is longer duration. One is short duration, short session, and one is long session. Okay. What do you mean by short session? A short session means that whenever your user closes the tab, right, his session expires. Until and unless he is on the website, his session remains, right? And as soon as he leaves the website, his session expires and he have to log in again. Long-term session means that for several days, his session do not expire, right? When he comes back to the website, his session remains the same. You can do these two both on front end as well as on back end. Okay. For short session, For short session, you can store it in session storage that frontend provides or browsers provides, right? You can store it in cookies. For long session, you have indexed DB or local storage. Understood? The same thing can be implemented on the backend as well. See, whenever you are writing your code, you are responsible for your code, right? You cannot depend on the front end guy that he implements something or not. It's your code, it's your world. You have to make it as beautiful as possible, right? So we store sessions on the backend as well. When we want to store sessions for a shorter duration, we mostly save it in RAM, okay? With the help of, can anybody guess? Redis, okay? Redis is very similar to session storage. You have a get and set method in Redis as well, okay? Redis stores your session in RAM, okay, which is much more faster than your hard disk, right? For a longer duration, you store it in the database, mostly your Mongo database. Understood? For a shorter duration, if you want things to be very, very fast and very for a very short duration, then you store it in Redis. Understand, Redis stores it in RAM. If you are using, if there are too many sessions, right, you cannot store millions of rows in Redis. Redis is for very short duration, it stores it in RAM, but because it stores the data in RAM, you can fetch the data very fast. Okay. Whereas you can either store it in database or in your file system. You can create a CSV file or you can create any Excel type of sheet where all the sessions are stored, and you can fetch that session for a very long duration, right? Redis we are not going to cover on today's class, but Redis is very straightforward. It is very simple. If anybody has any idea of session storage or local storage, Redis has basically two things: a dot get method, a dot set method. Right? Dot get is for getting something from Redis or RAM. Dot set is for setting a new value. It accepts two things. One is the key. In get, you only require key. One is the set. You require a key as a string and what data you want to save in Redis. Okay, there are only two methods. Take it as a THA for today that you have to read about Redis. Right. RAM is at the server side. Okay. Whatever this server is a system, right? Server is a local machine, is a machine which has some hard disk, some RAM, some CPU, etc., and other configurations. So on your server only, Redis stores it in RAM. Okay. So you guys understood sessions? We have been using sessions. We have been storing sessions in request.user. Remember? In request.user, we save whatever the user is present for that specific login. Remember this? So one way is to save it in request.user. The other way is to save it in either Redis or some database. Yes, yes, K2. Okay. Sessions you guys understood or not? Sessions you guys understood? Yes. Awesome. Cloudinary. Cloudinary is basically very similar to Google Drive or any drive for that matter. It stores bunch of photos, videos, files, or whatever. Mostly it is used for images only, and it gives you an API for getting the file or for uh, post and get calls. For basically, it gives you API to modify this file to get the file from the Google storage, right? And to put the file there, etc. So Cloudinary is very similar to Google Drive or any cloud uh, drive, right? It is basically a storage where you can store bunch of photos or videos and get it via APIs. It can scale as per your requirement, right? So if you have very large photos, large images, or large videos, right? You want to have a very high quality and you want to get it via API calls, then you use Cloudinary. I have never used it for PDF, Harsh. It is mostly for images. Understand this. It is mostly for images. Okay. I have always used it for images only. I'm not sure whether PDF or other files can be stored or not. Right. Now comes Passport. We have been doing authentication in all our projects, right? Passport is for authentication only. Okay. Whatever we have been doing, there is a package that does it better. or at least whatever we have been doing, it also does that same thing. Okay, PASSPORT, passport. Right. So the purpose of passport. See, whenever there is a package, there is a purpose. It has been trying to solve some issues that other developers have been facing and try to minimize the time that other developers have been spending on implementing anything, right? So it has something called strategy. Strategy is nothing but a middleware, right? We have been creating middlewares for authentication. So it has a strategy which works as a middleware basically. Right? There are multiple strategies for local, for OAuth, for other type of authentications, etc. Okay? If you go to the Passport website, let us go to the Passport website and click on strategies. You will find there are 538 strategies in Passport. Okay? For example, authentication using bearer token that we have been implementing, Facebook login, Google OAuth login, right? There is another company for authentication called Auth0. So if you want to use that, there is a passport for that, right? For Twitter login, for OpenID, for local, for JWT. So there are 538 ways of authentication. Okay? These you can treat it as plugins or middlewares, whatever you prefer. Right? So it gives you a bunch of middlewares or functions which help you authenticate. We have been doing local authentications. We are going to use local authentication also. Only you implement Google login. The same way that I'm implementing local authentication, the same code can be used to authenticate via Google also. They are all free to use until and unless they are specific company based. For example, Auth0 is a company based. You require an this thing keys for that specific thing. So you have to create an account on that specific company, generate a key, put it in your passport, and get things done. The beautiful thing is the functions is the same for all and for 538 strategies. So the way that you implement local authentication via email and password, the same function can be called for Google authentication, for Facebook authentication, for Twitter authentication, and whatnot. Right? So you have strategies or middlewares giving out from passport, and then you have the authenticate function where you provide uh, basically what type of authentication you're going to use. So you have the local authentication for today's class. Similarly, you can use different strategies. You can easily find all those strategies and code on their website. Right. So passport is for authentication. We have been doing authentication for a very long time now. We are just going to twist it a little bit and use passport. It is a very, very, very famous library being used across nearly all of the Node.js platforms. Right. Any doubts in these? Any doubts in these? No? Awesome. Awesome. Right. Um, okay, let me give you one more thing to learn, uh, which is called logging. See, we have learned about the architecture, right? We have learned about models, views, controllers in our previous class. Logging and alerting. Alerting also we have learned via Discord bot, right? Same way, there is something called logging. Now, what happens is, suppose you have your social network website, right? Now, you released it to prod environment and you released it to bunch of users, right? You have released your social networking website or an e-commerce website or whatever website to a bunch of people and you are gaining traction. Now your users can use mobile, your users can use tablets, your users can use desktops, or your users can use laptops with a very, very wide variety of versions, OS, configurations, and things like those. Right? Are you guys following this? So, in Android only, there are 20 versions now. A person can be using a very, very old mobile. Your website should work on that phone also, right? Right or wrong? But when you are moving from development to testing to uh, pre-prod or product testing to prod, it is not possible to have all the devices possible, is it? It is a very, very costly process, first of all, right? And it is impossible on the first go. You cannot have all the devices possible or ever created, right? So what you do is you give very proper logging to your APIs. Now, what does logging do? For example, suppose something is working for me, right? I have created register API with all the edge cases, with all the security, with all the performance, right? And I gave it for testing and everything passed it. It is gone through user. But the user network is too slow. None of us have been using 2G, but the user is on 2G, okay? And it is taking a very, very long time for him to get the APIs. And somewhere in between, this code is breaking, right? Now, what we do is we are used to put console logs, right? To debug everything, correct or not? We are used to write console logs to debug everything. Now, if we left our console logs, where does these console logs comes? It comes on the server terminal, right? It comes on the server terminal, and you have to keep watching these logs to check whether which is the faulty one. Correct. Now, one thing you can do is suppose millions of people are using it, right? And somebody is saying that your register is failing. What you do is you use a library called Morgan, Morgan, I guess. Okay, and in place of console log, you use Morgan logger. You use a logger by Morgan to save it to a file. Save to a file or save to a cloud, right? And in place of console log, you use Morgan's logger, which is saving to a file or saving to a cloud. You ask the user, okay, tell me your session, tell me your user ID or whatever email, and tell me the time. Okay, you go to that file, you open that file, search for that time or email, and see the logger, right? Just like you use console.log, you put down logger.log or something, right? Uh, your email or password or whatever, right? So you specifically get, okay, you have not provided a valid email over here, or your password authentication was not working, or it took too much time, etc. So in place of console logs, you open a file and check what is the possible thing that have been happening, and you debug it. You put a condition in your code, and you release a hotfix or something. You release in your uh, uh, next release the fixing this issue, right? Also, there are multiple. For example, there is something called Datadog, right? What it does is, whatever files you are creating now, or you use Datadog APIs, you push to Datadog, just like Cloudinary now, you are pushing your images to Cloudinary. In this case, you are pushing your log files to Datadog. It gives you a dashboard where it it gives you a very beautiful UI to show all the things that have been happening throughout, right? So it gives you that, okay, you are getting wait, uh, wait time too long too many times now. Okay, there are multiple providers, monitoring providers like this. See, this type of UI you get, where you get things like in chart, or you get 10 slowest pages or disk space or things like those, right? You have filters, you have sorting, all the APIs are already created for them. So you use all these type of services to debug what is happening in your uh, this thing, in your platform, and what you can improve, right? See something like this, right? Over here, you sorted by date. In the title, you wrote account takeover, potential successful brute force, right? Logs are not encrypted. AWS configuration modified. CloudFront is not integrated with WAF. Things like those. And it also gives you a priority: critical, high, medium, low, things like those. Okay. So we are going to use Morgan not in a very advanced way, but just we are going to set up Morgan, right? If you search for Morgan npm, you will find a repository, and you will get all the code examples. Suppose you want to save it in a file, you use something like this. You create your Express application, you have fs for file modification, right? You use fs dot create write stream to wherever you want that file, right? You write the name of the file with .log, and you give this to Morgan. Okay, Morgan with combined this stream. So it will, whenever there is a new log, it will keep on writing in access.log, and you can view this access.log, or you can upload it on Datadog to get a very uh, better understanding of what is happening in your application. Okay. Are there any doubts in logging? Are there any doubts in logging? No doubts? Seems interesting, right? Okay. So we have covered sessions, we have covered passport, we have covered Cloudinary, we have covered your logging. Now let's jump to code. Okay. I have my environment variable created. I am putting it inside a config folder this time so that I can give you a different perspective if you want to save the environment file into a different folder, right? It has all my Cloudinary keys, so I'm not going to open that. I have all my front end in views, right? I'm sure you guys don't need any help in the front end part. It is going to be very straightforward. Let me run the front end for you. Uh, I think it was running on localhost 8000. Yes. So this is my front end. On the home page, we are going to have login and sign up. When you basically sign up, if you are already logged in, if you have a session created, it logs in for you, right? And uh, return to your home page where you can create a post from your right sidebar in which you write a title, you write a caption, you upload an image, right? It uploads to Cloudinary, you hit submit. When it gets uploaded, you see that image over here, and you have a logout button over here, your username and email over here. You have a button from return to feed. You click on it, you have all the feeds, right? You can click on somebody else like button. It increases the like by one. You cannot add more likes, right? Add below, you can add comments, return to your profile or return to your feed, right? The front end is understood. Let me log out. If you log in, okay, chalo. I forgot my password, so let me come back and sign up. All the sessions are getting stored on the backend, not on the front end. Remember that it is getting stored in the cookies on the front end, but backend is exactly handling what to do with the cookies and things like those. Right. Username, email, password. Right. Now it will create a session for you and it will automatically log in. Right. Now you can create your post over here or return to your feed. If you already have some images uploaded, it will show up over here. This is a new user. I have not uploaded anything, so we do not have any images over here. No, we are not using Bootstrap. You can use Bootstrap, but we have created all the CSS ourselves over here. Or we may be using Bootstrap. Yes, yes, yes. We are using Bootstrap, I guess. We are using Bootstrap, right? So you have all the everybody's. There are 3 to 4 users that I've created. So the title, the image, the like button, and when you click on it, you can comment on it, right? Front end is understood. I hope there are no doubts in front end. Let me show you the code also. On the first page, we are using EJS, right? We can use include also over here, which basically imports all the code written in that EJS file over here, right? So if I write include partial header, so in partials header, whatever is written, doc type, HTML with link tag, right? Bootstrap, your Ajax calls, font awesome, right? And your CSS with post your photos, the title and things like those. All this code comes and put it over here. It will be replaced with all the code of the header. Similarly, this will be replaced with all the code on the footer, right? Then in between we have the main. Inside that we have a login a tag, anchor tag, and we have a sign up anchor tab, which we show it as a button, right? In login, you can write if conditions like this. In EGS, we have a section inside that we if there are local message errors, then it shows up using a loop, right? With a div class alert with the message. You close the loop like this. Then there is a form with email and inputs, and we include the footer over here, right? Similarly, for post, we have post.title variable over here, and we show all the posts like this. Okay, right. So we have a front end like this. Now let's create our server.js. Give me 1 second. Yes. Okay. First, let's create our Express app. We are going to use MongoDB for this. So we are going to use Mongos. Right. We are going to use Passport. I've already installed all the packages. Passport. Okay. Um, then we are going to use Logger from Morgan. So simply have it from Morgan. Okay. We are going to use ConnectDB, which I have written it in config. Database.js. Great. Then we are going to use our .env. Now I have put my .env file inside config folder. Okay. To use that .env file from the config folder, we always use .config, right? Inside that, you can pass in the option. For example, for path, I can write /config/.env. In this way, you can change the path from where it takes up the config. Okay. Some of you had doubts with it, so this is how you do it. Great. Let's call the correct DB so as to up our database, right? App.set view engine as EJS. We have already covered this, right? And app.use express.static, take it from public folder. Okay, we have our CSS in public folder. I have to put this inside public folder. Let's put CSS inside public folder. Right. Okay. Now app.use express.url encoded app.use express.json. Right. Now to use your logger, you put it as the middleware logger as dev. Okay. We are going to use in the development environment, so I'm putting it in dev mode. It will put all the logs in your terminal. I've already shown you how to write it in file, so I'm not going to use that. Right. And app.listen your process.env port console.log server is running. Right. So first, let's take up database.js. Simply, I've required Mongoose and used mongoose.connect with your URI and some of the configurations. And I've console log MongoDB connected. If there is an error, I have put console.error and I have exited the code. Okay. The first thing for passport, you have to create a passport.js for the configuration. Okay. We are going to use email and passwords to sign up and sign in. So that means we are going to use local strategy. There is a different package called passport local for that. Dot strategy. Okay. We are going to use mongoose in this. So let's have mongoose. Require it from mongoose. Right. And we are going to create and use the user model. So let's do that. This is very similar to what we have been creating for auth.js middleware. Remember, in our previous projects, we have created auth.js middlewares. This is your auth.js middleware in passport terms. You create a function in which you would be getting a passport instance, right? Uh, then you will write passport.use to create a middleware and have a new local strategy. This creates an object for your class of local strategy where you're going to use email and password, right? By default, this local strategy uses username and password. To change it to email and password, you have to write username field is your email. Okay. Why? Because by default it uses a username and password, but I want to use email and password. That is why I have to put this over here. When this is done, you will have a callback in which you would be getting three things: an email, a password, right? And a done method. This done method is nothing but an alternative to next. We have been using next, right? Remember? So whenever everything goes okay, you use next. In passport terms, that next is replaced with done. Okay? I hope there is no issue still here. This you are creating the middleware, right? Now in this middleware in auth.js, what all do you check? You first do find one, right? Find one by email, which you get email dot to lowercase. You're going to save that email in a lowercase. So you have to find it by a lowercase method itself, right? When this is done, you will get an error and user. We have already learned about callbacks, correct? So when a user is found or not found, it will have a callback with an error and the user. If there is an error, if there is an error, what to do? Return done or next with your error. Okay, first error, then your success. Right? We have already learned about callbacks. If your user is not found, then also return done with I want to send this now. Right? There is no error. Right? If you check this done, okay, there is no error. There is no user as well. Even there is no success. But I want to send this JSON back to your front end or whoever is making the API. Email, your email not found. Right. Now, if your user dot password you did not find, right? Then what to do? There is no error, so null. There is also no success, so false, right? And you want to return a message saying Suppose I'm giving you a very general code over here. This happens when you use Google sign in or Facebook sign in or any other sign in. They are not going to send you the password also, right? That is a security risk. So this case occurs when you do Google sign in, Facebook sign in, or things like those, right? You won't find a user.password when doing this. So you have to tell the user that you do not have a user.password. You set a normal user password whenever doing this. Your account was registered with sign in provider. Please enter your password or something like that. Right? Now, your user will have a compare password function. Right? We were using bcrypt or other things like those. Here, your user will itself have a compare password where you put in your password and you get a callback error and is a match. Again, if there is an error, simply have done as error. If there is a match, simply send the user whatever have been found with no error. So in place of error, there is none. And in place of success, you want to send the user, right? If suppose nothing happens, then you return done with no error, no success, and the message invalid credentials. Okay. Till here, I hope there is no doubt. We have already done all these things manually. We are just doing it with Passport now. You create a passport.use middleware. You create a new local strategy. It by default accepts a username and password. If you are not going to use username, you use username field as email. Then you have these three things: an email that you are getting from user, a password, and a done. We have already used next. It is very similar, right? Then you find the user. If with the email dot to lowercase, you get a callback with error and user. If there is an error, you return done with the error, right? If the user is not there, then you return this. If user password is not there, then you return this. Then you compare password with the password and it receives a callback with error and is a match. If there is an error, you return done with error. If there is a match, you return user. If nothing happens, you return this message. Okay? Any doubts? No doubts? No doubts? Okay. Then we were setting this in request.user, right? Now there is something called serialize and deserialize in Passport, where uh, in our session what we are going to store and what we are not going to store is dependent on serialize and deserialize. So you have passport.serialize, serialize user, right? In this, you are going to have a callback with user and done. Okay, and you have done with no error and what you're going to store in the session. So I'm just going to store user.id in this. So this function, what it does is this user ID, it stores in the session. Okay. And if you want to, it stores it in an encrypted manner. If you want to decrypt it, you have passport.deserialize user. Okay. In this, you have a callback with the ID that you are sitting over here and done. You set up the user dot find one or find by ID with the ID. Okay. And whenever this is completed, you get a callback with again error and your user, and you return done with the error and the user. Okay. So whenever you want from the session, you will get the entire user object now. This is saving your user ID in your this thing session, right? And this is basically decrypting, getting the ID, finding it by the user, and passing it to the next function that is calling this. Okay. Are there any doubts in this? So there are three functions: passport.use, passport.serialize, and passport.deserialize. Are there any doubts? Now over here, you have to get it. So require dot slash config slash passport, right? You pass in the passport. See, over here, you created a function where you are passing the passport, right? So you have to pass the passport from here, okay? And then in your middlewares, what you have to do is you pass in this middleware. So passport can take care of the authentication from now on. Passport.initialize you have to call, and passport.session you have to call. So it takes care of the session, it takes care of the boilerplate, right? It starts the main thing, right? There is also now where do we save the session? So you save the session using express session, right? Whenever there is a session, you save it in MongoDB. Okay. To save it in MongoDB, there is another package which Express Session use called Connect Mongo. right? And you pass the session over here. Now we have our imports. We have our imports. We just have to use we have to set it in our middleware, right? We have to call that function. We call the session function. We pass in some configurations, just like everything. With secret, let's say secret only, right? We have been using secrets. We have been using bcrypt. Everything is inside passport only. Okay. Would you like to resave it? So I set it to false. Okay. And what is the store that you're going to use? So I'm going to use MongoDB as my session storage. So I create a new Mongo object and pass in mongoose connection to mongoose dot connection. Right. So through mongoose, it is going to store all these things into your session storage. Right? All your session, you did not understood serialize and deserialize. Okay. Okay. Let me cover this first. Now, you told passport that you are going to store whatever the session that you have created, and you are going to store user ID in that session. Okay. Now you have to tell passport, okay, I'm going to store, you manage the session, right? You take care of the JWT, you take care of the bearer token, everything. I'm just going to tell you where you have to store the session, where you have to store the user ID. For that, you have something called Express Session, which has many plugins, just like Passport. Express Session also has many plugins. To specifically use MongoDB, you have this connect Mongo, you pass in the session, right? Now you have imported, you have the second step is you have to call that function with some parameters. So you pass in the session with the secret that you have been using previously, right? And the store as the MongoDB store through Mongoose. Okay, through Mongoose. The Mongoose session or the Mongoose table or database that we are using throughout our application, it is going to use that same store or same database to store sessions as well. Okay. Then you use app, you pass in the middlewares passport.initialize and passport.session. Both these middlewares you have to provide in app.use. Okay. Now talking about serialize and deserialize. So, Harsh, remember we were creating a user object with ID as suppose 1, and we were decrypting it and saving it, remember, and then decrypting it back to the same thing. We were converting this into a very random string. Remember this? And we were converting this string back to this. Yes, this serialize and deserialize are doing the same thing. Okay, serialize is basically converting your user ID. It is taking user colon user ID and converting it into a very random string. This deserializing is converting it back and giving you the ID. Wherever you are going to now use that specific thing, you make this database call and you get the whole user rather than just having either you can use the same ID, right? Or you can use the whole user. So whatever you pass in done will be passed to your next function. Now understood serialize and deserialize? Got it? Awesome. 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 I hope passport is not too overwhelming for you guys. See, the function that we have created, we can use the same function. We do not have to recreate it. You can simply copy paste the same thing in any of your project, right? This function will never change now. Understood? This function will never change now. Just the strategy may change over here and how you are taking this, but you can use that same function in any of your projects and it will work the same. Okay? I'm taking a break for 1 minute. Let me know if you guys have any doubts. I'm back. I am back. You guys don't have any doubts? Okay then. Let's create our controller then. You can find, see, in place of local strategy, you replace it with Google strategy or Twitter strategy. That's it. Okay. Now, let's create our controllers. We were doing validations. We have created a custom functions for validations also, right? There is a package for validations also called validator. Let us use that as well. Great. We are going to use our user model, so let's require it as well. Great. let's first create a login. You will get request, response, and next. These three things you are going to get. Right. Now, suppose there are multiple errors, right? So it's better to have an array with all the errors together and send them together to front end. Let's have an array which is going to store all the errors that we are going to get. Let's call it validation emails. Validation errors, right? Right. If your validator dot is email. If it is not an email, what is not an email? Request dot body dot email. Right? We push into validation errors dot push the message enter valid email. Okay. See, I'm not using our own custom validator. So I'm using a library called validator. It has a function called isEmail, which specifically checks whether it is an email or not, just like we created our own, right? I am replacing everything we created our own with packages that have already been created by the JavaScript community, right? Validator dot is empty, request dot body dot password. If your password is empty, then we have to push enter valid password, right? Now, uh, simply check if your validation errors dot length is greater than 0, then you have to send back error, right? You will send return response dot redirect redirect to login itself. Okay, or you can send the all the errors that you have been pushing. Now, request dot body dot email, we have to make uh, your email usable. We have to make our email usable. Okay, so this validator has a function called normalize email. Okay, you pass in the request.body.email. Okay, now suppose you have something like Rachit dot Srivastava at the rate gmail.com. Okay, what Gmail does is it will remove this dot. So if I try to log in from Rachit Srivastav at the rate gmail.com, it will treat both of them as same, or it used to, right? So that just with dot, there are not two email IDs identical to each other. Okay, so it removes all the dots, it converts it in like this and saves it. Also, it it converts it into sorry, smaller case, so that if suppose one word is capital, then this and this is same again. To do the same thing over here, we have Gmail remove dots, okay, as true, so that it removes the dot and it has a greater validation, right? So that people do not spam that two emails are exactly the same, just the dot, there is a dot difference. So there are multiple validations or normalization techniques out there. Do learn them, right? This is also a check. Now, to authenticate, to sign in, you simply use passport dot authenticate. What strategy you are going to use to authenticate? Local, okay? You pass in, you get a callback with error, user, and more information, okay? Now, same thing. This code is never going to change. Just the local or Google or Twitter, whatever you want to use, you use it over here. It is going to call this passport.use and it is going to check all the logic that you have written, right? If everything is okay, see, in done, you were passing three things, remember? In done, you were passing three things. One first was for error, second was for success, and third one was for message. The same done you are getting over here. The first one is for error, the second one is for user. You have put false sometimes over there, right? And the third one is for your messages. So if there are errors, you simply return next with error. If there is no user, you simply redirect it to slash login. Okay. Now you will have a request dot login method provided by your one and only passport. It does everything for you. You simply give in the user, right? It has all the session storage, all the session management, everything handled by itself. You simply get an error if there are any in logging in, right? And you call the next method if there are errors. And at last, if the user is logged in, then you have the session dot return to if you have set it, or to basically your profile slash profile. Okay. If you have set a return to when you were setting the session, then you can have a return to over here, or if it is not set, you pass in the profile, right? 1 second. Just 1 second now. This passport auth authenticate, it requires your request response, right? So you pass in a request, your response, and your next, which is you're done over there. Okay, right. So see your login code, how it changed. You are checking the validations, right? That you always check. If your validations fail, you redirect it to login, right? You have a normalize where you replace, you have trimmed all the white spaces before and after. You delete all the dots, all the different type of things, right? You normalize your email before saving, and then simply you call passport.authenticate with the strategy that you want to use. It will give you a done, right? And it will ask you for request response in next. You will get an error user and info inside your done or in your callback, right? And whatever you want to do with this data, you do that. If there is an error or there is no user, right? In the last, you simply put request.login. This also Passport provides. You pass in the user and you simply redirect it to uh, profile page if the user is successfully logged in, right? Rest everything Passport handles in itself, right? Now, if you want to log out, exports dot logout. Register also I'm getting into it. Register is a little bigger one, so I'm firstly taking up logout. Request response, right? You just like you had login, you have logout over here as well. You have request.logout. You simply console the you simply call this function, it will log you out. Okay. If you want to put something in console or logger, you have a callback where you can write your console.log user logged out. Okay. And you have to destroy the session as well. So you will have request.session dot destroy. What it does is it deletes that row, the session row with the user ID from MongoDB. Okay. Inside this, you will have an error. Either you, if you want, you can console this error as well. And your passport, uh, whatever you were deserializing over here, na, whatever you were deserializing over here, whatever you were putting in done, this data passport was setting it in request.user. So you have to put request.user as null now. Okay, request.user we were using previously also, remember? And you have to redirect back to slash or slash login wherever. Okay, so simply you have these functions in your request itself. Request.login, request.read, this should be response.redirect. Right, request.logout, request.session.destroy, right? And you have the request.user from this passport.deserialize. Okay. Now comes the sign up. I hope there are no doubts in sign in or log out. You will have request, you will have response, you will have next. Okay. You do all the validations over here. I'm not doing the validations for the time being. Okay, simply have the validator dot email, check the password if it has length or not, if the request dot body dot password is equal to request dot body dot confirm password or not, right? Because you were asking for two things. One is password and one is confirm password. So check that as well over here, right? Then you normalize your email before saving. So request.body.email is equal to validator.normalize email with request.body.email gmail remove dots as true or false, whatever, right? Then you save it in user with the username from request.body.username. Similarly, email and password, right? Over here, you save the password as well using bcrypt. Now, whenever I'm saving it as request.body.password for now, we are running out of time. Right. Now, when you save this, right, uh, with user.save, now whenever this is done, you will get an error, right? Get the whole code from the description. I'm skipping many parts over here, right? You have to redirect to login, right? You have to log in also. So you simply use request.login just in sign in. Just like sign in, you will get a user and you will get a callback with error. And if there are no errors, you simply do response dot redirect to your profile. Okay. So simply I just wanted to show you that this request.login is also accessible to sign up also because this is part of request. Whenever everything is okay, user signed up, you save that user, then you sign in for that user on the backend itself. Everything is provided by passport and you redirect it to the profile. Okay. Logout is using passport, right? See, request.logout. This logout function is provided by passport only, and session.destroy this is also provided by passport. Okay. I hope there are no doubts. No doubts, right? Okay, awesome. Now, we are running out of time, so let me just have the Cloudinary very quick. Simply create a middleware for Cloudinary. Okay. Inside this, require Cloudinary, right? We are going to use version v2, so dot v2, right? Then we are going to get all the keys that it requires, API keys and API secret. When you create an account on Cloudinary, you will get API key and API secret. I have saved it in env file, so I'm going to get it from env file. Config your path is dot slash, okay, dot slash config slash dot env. Okay, this path it takes from the uh, outermost path, right? That is why I've not used dot slash over here. I've used dot slash. Okay, Cloudinary dot config, again import, call a function with some parameters. That is the only thing that you need to do in most of your packages. You have to provide a cloud name, which we are going to get when we create a Cloudinary account, right? The process is very simple, so I'm not going to into much details into that. You can easily find it on Google. You simply have to create the account. This is capital, so cloud. Okay, anyways. API key, we get it from process dot env dot API key. API secret, we get it from process dot env dot API secret. Okay, and do module dot export over here. Right. So this basically creates your configuration for using Cloudinary. Okay. Multer we have already covered, right? Multer, do you guys remember? For uploading, we use Multer. So for that, we simply have require Multer, and we are going to save it on in some disk storage. We are going to check for this thing, whether the file is JPG, JPEG, or PNG. Okay. Now to use this, are there any doubts? Let's use the Cloudinary. Let's create a route for post.js. Right. I hope there are no doubts. Yes, we can use multer anywhere. Exactly, did not get why. What is the issue with multer? Okay. Anyways, okay. So let's simply have our express. Okay. Or simply have the router over here, express dot router, right? And do module dot exports the router, right? So if you want to have something on the Cloudinary, first you have to go through multer only, right? So over here you will have a middleware from multer. So suppose you have to upload some images, right? While creating the post. Let's have create post API, right? First, it will go through multer. Let's have the multer over here. Constant upload equal to require dot slash middleware slash multer, right? So suppose if you want to upload only one specific thing, specific file, so you use upload dot single the file. This is a middleware and pass it to uh, controller. Let's say post controller dot create post. Okay, this post controller we will write in the controller folder inside post, right? So first your multer will take the file, understand that this is a file, right? Upload it and pass it to this specific function. Okay, now let's create this function. You have to go through multer only even though you are using Cloudinary, right? Over here, let's have our Cloudinary, right? And let's have our exports. We have created this function, right? Create post. Let's have create post over here. I'm just trying to tell you how there are different ways of writing the same thing, right? Request response. We are going to use async, so we have to use try catch. on cache, we are simply going to use console.log your error. Right. Now we have to upload it in Cloudinary, right? We have to upload this in Cloudinary, whatever file we are getting. Multer will put the file in request.files, okay, and give you a path. Result is equal to await Cloudinary dot uploader dot upload, right? Request dot file dot path, right? Now let's wait for post. See, you just have to write this specific line to upload it to Cloudinary. That's it. That's it. We are going to create post uh, model. So post model dot create and simply save it. Right. The title from request dot body dot title. Right. Uh, the image you would get in result dot secure URL. Okay. And you will also get a Cloudinary ID. That is also very important. So let's save it. Cloudinary ID uh, result dot public ID. Okay. Similarly, you can have captions, you can have likes inside this. I'm not going into details for that, right? And whenever this is done, you simply redirect it to profile. But see, for uploading it to Cloudinary, there are two things. One is for Multer. There are two middlewares. One is for Multer. You have this Multer configuration. We have already covered this in our previous lectures, where you set in the storage, you set in the filters, you check if this is an image or not. Then you have the Cloudinary middleware, right, where you write the cloudinary.config, your cloud name, API key, and secret, whatever you get while creating the project, right? And inside routes, first you have to pass in through multer and then call this function. Whenever you call this function, you simply await for cloudinary.uploader.upload whatever the file path is. It takes the file, upload it to Cloudinary, and give you the result. Result has two important things. One is the secure URL with which you can access that image, right? And one is the Cloudinary public ID. Any doubts still here? Any doubts still here? No? Awesome. Suppose you want to delete this photo from the Cloudinary. Then you simply, for example, if you have delete post, right? Again, we have try and catch. If you want to delete this, Then simply you write this line: await post dot find by ID, whatever ID you are getting from request.params, so request.params.id. Okay, you will get the post from this, and write await Cloudinary dot uploader dot destroy with your Cloudinary ID. Post dot your Cloudinary ID. So this is basically you. Whatever the Cloudinary ID you save over here with the public ID, this whenever you use this URL, it gives you a public URL where you can show the image, right? And you want to delete it, you need the Cloudinary ID. You write cloudinary.uploader.destroy and your Cloudinary ID. This will delete your photo from your Cloudinary account. Okay, understood? Any doubts in Cloudinary? No doubt? Awesome. So if I inspect over here, this image is coming from Cloudinary. Can you guys see? Response.cloudinary.com. This image is coming from Cloudinary. Inside folder image slash upload, it has given name itself, right? A random name .png. So it returns a path which you can simply use and show it in your website. Okay, so we have covered passport. For passport, you start with a config passport where you write your strategy, right? For this local strategy, it uses username. In place of username, we are using email. So we have set this username field as email, email password done. You done do all the checks and use done to write to send it to the next function, right? With your error, your success, and your info, right? Then you have serialize and deserialize of how you want to save it in the session. So you are saving just user ID in the session, and whenever you are trying to get something, before that you are finding it in the database and returning the whole user object back. Then in auth, whenever you want to log in, simply call request.login. You will get the user and redirect it to the specific page. Whenever you want to log out, you simply have request.logout function, and you have to destroy the session also created. So request.session.destroy. It also sets you request.user for you. So you have to put it to null, right? So this is all for passport. For Cloudinary, you have to create this middleware. Simply require that function, call the config method, pass in your API key, API secret, and cloud name. Set up your multer, right? In your routes, first upload it using multer and pass into controller. In the controller, simply write one single line: cloudinary.uploader.upload, whatever the file path is. If you want to delete, simply write one line: cloudinary.uploader.destroy, whatever the Cloudinary ID that is sent to you by Cloudinary. Right? For logger, you simply have logger over here from Morgan. You put it in the middleware, that's it. Most of the logging is done by them. You can also go through the Morgan npm package, right? And see how you can write it inside file or uh, what all you can do with Morgan. Okay, so this was all for today's class. I will meet you in the Mahasabha VC, right? I hope today also was an enjoyable class. Yes, right. Peace.